I am Mike.
And I am Adrian.
And we are young doctors from the Philippines.
If this is your first time to join us, we talk about anything related to pre-med, med proper, clerkship, internship, PLE, USMLE, and beyond.
Welcome to the Better Pill, your weekly prescription of tips and insights to become better students,
better interns,
and better doctors. What's up, bro?
What's up, bro? What's up, better doctors? Welcome to part 2 of
Getting ready for first year med school online.
Yes, that is correct. So last time, we had a guest, diba? Si Gab, who is an incoming second year medical student. So last time, he shared kung paano talaga yung experience niya sa first year. You know, the challenges that he faced, kung paano nila ito na-overcome. Yes, yung daily routine, kung how their lectures and SGDs go. Tas nagbigay din siya ng tips, bro, no, kung anong dapat i-prepare before you get into first year med talaga.
Yung mga essentials, mga must-haves. So ngayon naman, bro, anong pag-uusapan natin sa part 2? Ano ba to? Harry Potter 2 na?
Yes, bro. Part 2 of this episode. Very high yield pa rin. As high yield or even more high yield than the first part of this episode, no? This time naman, he will share the pros and cons of med school online. Ano pa nga yung iba, bro?
And yung mga complexities ng online. Kasi tayo, di ba? Wala talaga tayong experience sa online.
Kung meron man, sobrang limited lang.
Oo, sobrang. And baka low yield pa.
Yes, and si Gab talaga, since, he practically spent his first year of medical school na virtual lang talaga, marami talaga siyang may share sa mga listeners natin, bro.
Yes, actually, diba, naging teacher din siya during the pandemic before siya nag-med school. So, alam niyo yung both sides ng online learning. As a teacher and as a student.
Correct, bro. Kaya maganda din talaga yung perspective niya kasi hindi lang perspective of a student. May inputs din siya, no, as an educator, right?
Yes, bro, no? Kaya swak na swak talaga na siya pa rin sa second part.
Correct. So, wag na nating patagalin pa. Without any further ado, here is part 2 of Getting Ready for First Year Med School Online. So, yun, no? We've talked about what it was like, what first year med online is like, your daily routine, the essentials for freshmen. Now, let's talk about the pros and cons naman, bro, no? The pros and cons of kahit ano lang, enumerate mo lang the pros and the cons of the online setup. So, let's start with the pros na lang.
Sige, with the pros. Kasi I have a there's somehow a notion na nadidemonize ang online learning. But again, like I said, we need to accept the situation that we are in. So there are actually pros. For me, ang pinaka-pro for me ng online learning is the availability of resources. So yung availability of resources, gaya nga nasabi ko, parang mas naa-allow kasi kami parang na-force din kasi all of the professors need to be able to learn technology and need to be able to, record lectures. I believe it's very hard for some profs. Maraming mga teachers ang nahirapan doon. Pero I think that being done, it helped students somehow kasi available sa amin yung lecture the whole term or the whole semester. So parang ibig sabihin, parang kaya kong balikan yung first sem. Kaya kong balikan yung first shift. Kaya kong balikan yung second shift. And it actually lessens yung need for me to contact people and to ask questions. Like I could just listen again and again and again. So that's an advantage. Another thing is yung pagiging pwede ko kasing speed up, for example, yung lecture. So, pwede kong tignan yung lecture in the speed that I want. Like kapag nagmamadali na ako or feeling ko masyadong mabagal magsalita yung prof or ay yung physician or mahirap masyado siyang mabilis magsalita or mabagal, pwede ko kasing i-control yung speed nun. So that's an advantage. Another advantage I suppose is yun nga yung aside from being from having things accessed na mas flexible kasi I think nung on-site setup ninyo, tama ba? Nung on-site setup naman ninyo, hindi nyo naman nauulit-ulit yung lectures unless kayo mismo nag-record, tama ba?
Actually, bro, yung online namin nung PGI na eh.
Nung PGI na kasi nung time na yun, mga 2015 kayo nag-med, right?
2015.
Unless
pero hindi namin nare-replay, bro eh. Yung mga lecture.
So ayun. So I think yung being able to listen to it again.
Bro, konting list lang bro, konting list lang. So nabanggit mo yung pwede nyo i-balikan yung lecture kasi pwede mo i-replay eh. Do you still make trans ba sa batch nyo?
Yeah, we do. Actually mas yung paggawa for example ng notes basing on the lectures, it's actually a lot easier this time around kasi like yun nga, pwede mo kasing ulitin yung what did she say or what did he say. So pwede mo siyang mas masulat for word at mas ma-organize in a better way. So yun, we still actually do that. Yun pa. Aside from that, yung dun sa availability of resources and then yung dun sa repeatability, I think it also helps na nung inimplement nila nung year namin. Kasi nung unang nagkaroon ng online classes din, nahirapan din daw talaga sila. Pero nung time namin kasi, medyo feeling ko mas planchado na kasi yung pagkakagawa ng lectures. So it helps us kasi yun nga, ahead of time talaga binibigay yung lecture. So nagiging, napapractice yung space repetition. Ayun, yung space repetition. Napapractice namin siya somehow. Kasi yun nga, sabi ko sa inyo, yung first watch mo is the first learning. The actual day is the second learning. The night before the quiz is the third learning. Ibig sabihin na ma-maximize mo siya. And kung hindi mo kasi siya sasabayan kung paano ginawa yung lectures or kung hindi mo sasabayan yung ganong trend, feeling ko hindi mo kasi matitake advantage yung hindi mo matitake advantage yung setup. So, I think that's a clear advantage. Ano pa bang maiisip kong ibang advantage ng online setup? Ayun,
when it comes to the flexibility of yung handle mo yung time mo, would you say na mas handle mo yung time mo sa online setup? Kasi everything is there eh. The resources are available. When you need it, pwede mo siyang ma-access.
Yeah, somehow yes. Somehow that's a good question actually, no. Somehow pwede naman na ma-manage mo, mas ma-handle mo yung time mo, like kaya mong gumawa ng bagay on your own pace. But the thing is, kahit ganun kasi yung nangyari kasi, 'di ba sabi ko kanina, the laboratory components became paperworks and some of the activities actually shifted to some more demanding works. So mas nag-increase kasi yung workload, mas nag-increase din yung difficulty din ng mga questions and all of this stuff. Kaya feeling ko nag-neutralize din siya. Na balance din
balance
somehow.
Lang din yung...
Oo. So yung feeling mo kaya mo nang mag-handle na time. Sabi mo nung makakapag-gym pa ako nito, makapag-workout ka pa niyan. Tapos hindi makikita mo yung workload niya. Ay, shucks, hindi ko kayang i-manage to. So parang ganun. Which brings us sa mga cons din ng
Okay, let's go to the cons naman this time.
ng online learning. So, yun, nasabi ko na yung mga pros like yung pwede mo kasing i-repeat, pwede mo i-speed up yung mga lecture, tapos na ma-maximize mo yung space repetition, tapos yung na-minimize mo rin yung getting to really ask questions kasi like you can just repeat it. But that's also somewhat a con of the that's somewhat also a downside of online learning. You kind of lose that's the number one thing. You kind of lose the experience itself of clarifying things and being mentored by physicians. Yun yung pinakamasakit sa akin kasi it took me like 5 years before I went to med school. Tapos biglang ganito yung setup niya. Medyo mahirap yun for me kasi ako kasi matanong ako na tao, parang I ask doctors, I ask my mentors regarding this. Paano po kaya pag ganito yung nangyari? You cannot do that easily ngayon sa online
But
classes.
you can naman, no? You have the opportunity naman to raise your questions.
You have the opportunity to raise your questions synchronously kapag mga SGTs, but like those are for those subjects. Pero like for some subjects na ang ginagamit lang nila ay discussion board. So we have like a bulletin board or discussion board where you publicly ask a question. Medyo I think hindi nasasagot din siya agad. So I think that's also disadvantageous. I feel like it could be used more. I feel like it could be maximized more, but we are not maximizing it yet as of the moment. So that's definitely a con, yung lack of opportunity to ask questions. Another is of course yung retention. To be honest, with the load, pantay lang yung load niya ng learning, pero pagdating sa like activities, there are sometimes mahirap mag-space repetition or mahirap mag-budget ng time na mapapasadahan mo pa lahat, and you really have to accept with yourself na hindi mo kayang aralin lahat. And you have to be okay with the fact na hindi mo kayang aralin lahat. Ganun talaga yung reality.
Yeah. It's the same naman with with physical learning. Hindi rin naman namin maaral lahat talaga.
Oo, ganun nga. Pero parang ang naging con lang talaga dito ayun nga, hindi mo rin kasi sobrang makokontrol yung time mo.
Yeah.
So, kailangan mo rin talagang i-budget talaga na, okay, you have to be okay na, sige, dapat ito 80% lang, alam ko nito, ganyan. So, that's definitely a con of that. So, yun, nasabi ko na yung dun din sa connections. And, ano pa ba? Yung dun sa retention, like I mentioned earlier, yung dun sa retention, like ang hirap talaga mag-retain ng information online, to be honest. Kasi every subject is hindi na nakakapag-usap-usap masyado yung mga departments. Kasi 'di ba, mas mahirap mag-meeting ngayon. Another disadvantage is the disconnection. So tama kanina yung sinabi ni Sibs na kailangan naka-ready talaga yung wifi mo. But there are some things na hindi mo kasi makokontrol eh. Like for example, when you're taking the examination or taking the quiz for example, and then suddenly nawalan ka ng kuryente, nawalan ka ng wifi.
Yeah.
How do you go back,
That's
'di ba?
definitely an issue.
How do you go back? So actually mahirap mag-take ng examinations ngayon. I feel like tama yung rationale and tama yung naiisip na kaya hinirapan yung questions, and then nag-set talaga ng strict na timer, and then walang backtracking. Ganun naman almost sa lahat ng med schools now. Kasi there's really a high chance of cheating in some of the examinations, and there's a high chance of that, kaya kailangan ding gawin yun. But in terms of kasi 'di ba, mababa na nga yung retention mo, tapos 'di ba pagdating din ng examinations, like for me for example, there was one quiz na 0 ako ng 2-item or 4-item quiz sa anatomy because of the internet disconnection. That's a real thing. That's a real problem that we also encounter.
So how did they resolve that? Pag may mga ganong issues, connection issues, tapos in the middle of, for example, in the middle of a major exam, naputol yung connection mo. How do you settle that? Paano nila nire-remedy yung issue na yan?
Actually, sa bawat departments kasi they have or sa UST Med itself, they have like meron ka kasing form na parang i-fill out mo or parang report, so you really have to screenshot, you really have to be ready with documenting videos na nawalan kayo ng kuryente, or somehow pag nawalan ng kuryente hihingi ka daw ng actually ng parang certificate sa barangay, but sometimes hindi naman na siya nire-require, like basta mapatunayan mo lang talaga na nawalan ng kuryente or nawalan ng connection or bumagal yung internet connection, hindi kinaya ng platform ng school ninyo, so somehow ganun. Tapos kuminsan naman binibigyan naman nila ng chance like special exams or something. Sometimes kapag na-disconnect ka sa middle of the exam tas na-reconnect naman din agad, pwede kang bumalik kasi sa examination mo on the same item. Yun nga lang, yung timer talaga yung problema kasi since it's automated, medyo mahirap nilang kontrolin. That's really a con. That's really a hard thing, and I can just imagine my classmates from areas na talagang mahirap yung internet. Sobrang nakakaawa talaga sila. Like, kaya ngayon parang hindi mo na rin masabi na hindi mo na rin masabi talaga na na parang you mind being on top of the class or you mind being on the bottom of the class kasi parang you really understand that everyone is going to be affected by this problem somehow. So, ibig sabihin, there are things na hindi natin makontrol with our grades.
Yeah,
What you just have to
exactly.
control is your own attitude by how you adjust with the circumstances. So, yun, definitely con yun sa pagtitake ng examinations. Ano pa ba? Pagdating din sa calamities, for example, I think ang problema niyan pag halimbawa, pag sa Philippines, for example, pag mahigit kalahati or umaabot ng kalahati ng buong Luzon ang affected ng isang phenomenon like brownout, for example. Yung national grid, for example, nagkaroon ng ganyan or nagkaroon ng bagyo last time. Nagkabagyo last time, 1 week din kaming walang pasok. At kahit hindi umuulan sa Visayas, hindi umuulan sa Mindanao, hindi umuulan dito sa North Luzon, basta inulan, for example, ang Manila or inulan itong areas na to, like lagi sa Naga, yan, sa mga Bicol region, laging walang kuryente. So, pag nagkakaroon ng ganitong mga problems, we also have to adjust the whole schedule. So, natatambak siya sa ending. Kasi parang we all have to adjust. Unlike before, sa UST na nung nandun tayo sa Manila lahat, isang araw lang is enough for us to suspend classes. It doesn't happen this time. Hindi ganon. 1 week talaga yung kailangan to suspend the classes to adjust with the calamities. Like, kasi meron sa amin mga na-evacuate ng So, it's really empathy. You really have to exercise empathy with these kinds of situations. At mahirap din talaga siya. Another thing is yung con din niya yung, for example, yung sa time din ng mga namin. May mga kaklase kami na na-stuck sa ibang bansa. Like, for example, may kaklase kami taga-US. Imagine niyo yun, buong gabi siyang nag-aaral, tas umaga nagising ang family niya, siya naman ang tulog. Parang Philippine time talaga yung sinusundan niya. So, that's definitely con for that. Pero yun nga, gaya nga ng sabi ko, marami mang cons ang online learning, like yung hirap sa connectivity, hirap like for example sa calamity, hirap sa mga ganyan. Na lang talaga we need to accept that this is somehow, meron tayong pwedeng baguhin sa the way that things are being taught, the way that things are being run. But we also need to adjust the way that we respond to things. Okay lang na magalit regarding these problems, but we have to also realize kung paano ba tayo mag-a-adjust mentally. Kasi kung poproblemahin ko ng lahat ng bagay na to, baka hindi ko rin siya kayanin. So, you also have to have empathy for other classmates. Kung minsan ang ginagawa nga nila sa UST, parang, okay, sige, wala nang grade tong SGD na to. Pag hindi kayo naka-attend, okay lang. Kasi ibig sabihin nun, pag wala kayong, ibig sabihin, hindi graded tong mga activities na to. So, magpakita lang yung mga dapat magpakita. Parang iniisip mo na lang na, okay, ganito yung nangyayari, pero hindi. There's a greater purpose for everything that we're doing now. Yes, it's not ideal, pero hindi naghihintay ang bayan sa atin naghihintay ang Philippines sa atin Nakakapagod lang, pero yun, naghihintay kasi sila sa atin. Yun yung may reason tayo ba't kailangan nating patuloy na mag-aral kahit na we don't feel like it. Parang gano'n na lang iniisip ko.
So, talagang ang daming cons, no? Based nga sa sinabi mo, mas maraming cons sa pros. But of course, as with any other thing, marami naman talagang pros and cons, no? And siguro, what's beautiful is the medical education community is really trying its best to adapt to the changes, no? And syempre, learning naman is dynamic. And siguro, we have to be thankful na rin of the available technology. Imagine if this thing happened siguro 20 years ago, mapuputol for a while yung pag-aaral. Syempre, di ba? Kasi the technology hindi pa ganun ka-advanced. But ngayon, sobrang daming available na resources for us to be able to adapt to this pandemic.
And actually, sorry kung ma-cut short ko lang I mean, being able to still study medicine is a blessing in itself.
True.
I don't think a lot of people are looking at it that way. Parang ang nakita lang natin, mahirap mag-aral online. It's true, mahirap talaga mag-aral online. But for us to be even studying medicine in such in a pandemic or in this setup, parang ako na lang ang iniisip ko, parang yes, it's valid na ganito yung naiisip natin sa mga nangyayari. Pero ako kasi hindi ko na pakakawalan to eh. Kasi 5 years ko tong hinintay. And yun nga, parang I have a purpose kung bakit ako nag-aaral. So parang it in itself is a blessing for me na nakakapag-med ako kahit papaano. And wala akong magagawa dun sa pandemic, but I need to continue fighting din kasi.
Yeah, because especially in these times, no, we really need more doctors in the country.
Tama, bro. Ako naman, bro, yung realization ko sa pros and cons ni Gab. So, ang kailangan natin, no, acceptance, empathy, tsaka helping one another. Kasi ang goal natin, bro, hindi na magpataas ng grade or maging honor student na exempt.
Agree.
Ang goal natin yung patient, bro, no? Yun ang end goal natin na to treat patients, to help the patient.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's also sometimes na pag matutulog ka sa gabi, iniisip mo, hala, am I becoming the doctor that my patients will deserve in the future? Parang ganun kasi nandun yung ridicule na, shucks, gagraduate ako na online. Online ako nag-aral, ganito. Parang mga ganun. I think it's valid, pero naisip mo rin you just have to study anyways you just have to do your best anyways kasi that's better than not doing your best to help your patients.
You really just have to make the most out of distance learning kasi wala naman tayong choice ngayon That's the only way. Siyempre naman, there will come a time, and I think with the vaccination efforts, no, I think malapit na. I think we're nearing, I hope, no, and I pray that we are nearing the end of the tunnel na. So that everything can go back to normal, especially med school.
Hopefully, no, sa second sem, no, back to campus na, sana.
Yeah, we hope so too. Sayang din yung campus ng UST din. Good for mental health din yan.
True. Few final questions, Gab, no? If you were given a chance to go back to day 1 of first year med, are there things na babaguhin mo with your strategy and your approach with the online format of med school? Or would you still stick to how you did first year med? Kung may mga,
for me,
this is talagang sinasabi ni Sibs if you have a time machine at bumalik ka in the past, anong babaguhin mo? For our listeners ba who are incoming freshmen, syempre, may mga bagay ka bang babaguhin sana na ma-apply nila so they won't make the same mistakes in first year?
Oh, okay. Sige. You putting it that way, sige, sasagutin ko yan later in a better perspective. Pero kung ako kasi ang tatanungin ko, kung ako ang tatanungin nyo, for me, wala akong babaguhin the way that I learn. Kasi I had to accept din kasi na every shift, nagbabago ako ng learning strategy. Nagbabago. And it happens. It's normal. Kasi ibang-iba yung pagkakaturo ng first shift, sa second shift, sa third shift, sa fourth shift. And you really have to dance with the current. You have to ride the waves. Mahirap. You have to understand na there's no point in always fighting the wave pagdating sa pag-aaral ngayon kasi i-exhaust mo yung sarili mo, so you really need to use your energy. So wala naman akong babaguhin, but if doon sa dating ng question mo kanina, I feel like it's asking like, are there any things that I wish that I could have done better? There definitely are. There definitely are some things that I could have done better. Like first of all, do not take things all too seriously. It will really wear you out. Number 1 yun. It always begins with the heart set and the mindset. If your heart is not in it, if your mind is not fully committed to med school, mahirap siya You always need to return to your why. And what's good, I think, with when I started, was I already had the why kung bakit ako nag-start ng med school at bakit ako nagpapatuloy. And I always say to myself na hindi ko na to papakawalan. Kaya, yun yung lagi kong binabalikan every time na feeling ko mag-quit ako ng med school. So, yun yung kasi, there are some classmates, and that's the reality of med school. Pagdating ng first shift namin, second shift namin, may nag-quit talaga ng med school. And it's real. Umabot ng 9, ganyan. So, medyo madami yung nag-quit din. And not only with our section. So, yun, I feel like yun ay dapat talaga ma-set yun sa mga ano natin. I feel like I could have done better din dun sa aspect na yun. In terms of learning, how I wish that I also spent I also I how I wish na hindi ako nahiyang magtanong ng questions. I feel like kasi mahirap na nga mahirap makipag-connect online, but there are some questions that are not necessarily stupid eh. Yun ang mahirap kasi ngayon, lalo na kung introverted ka, or let's say for example, ngayon na online setup, parang mahirap talaga makipag-connect, but you just connect anyways.
Yes.
Huwag kang mahiyang
Agree.
makipag-connect. That's the essence of the human existence. Kung hindi tayo makikipag-connect with other people, and you realize this, no, medicine is a very social profession.
Yeah.
Hindi ka talaga magsusurvive alone.
Let me
So you
interrupt
have to
you
have-
there, Gab.
Yeah.
Sorry, kasi medyo strong yung feelings ko dyan sa asking questions. We were talking with Sibs about this in a previous episode,
Yeah.
no, na,
Oo.
you don't be afraid to ask questions, even if they are stupid. Di ba bobo yung tanong? The best time to ask stupid questions, the best time to appear dumb and ignorant is while you're in med school. Not when you're actually handling real
A
patients.
patient.
Diba?
Oo.
Di ba and I heard this in one of a motivational video in YouTube. Sabi niya, don't be afraid to be the most ignorant person in the room. Diba? Because if you accept that you do not know something, then at least you'll have the courage to ask and learn. Because yun naman yung point ng classroom eh. Virtual or physical. It's to learn. And diba, again, the best time to make mistakes is while you're in med school, not when you're
Yeah, I agree.
handling actual patients. So, yun, I that's a very good point, the one you said na, syempre, medicine is a very social profession, no? And dapat hindi tayo mahiya na mag-interact, mag-ask, to speak out what we think and what we feel, and to not be afraid to ask questions, especially to our professors. Kasi, they have the breadth of experience na wala tayo,
Yeah.
and we can always learn from them outside the books that we read. Mas marami
Yeah.
pa silang matuturo that we cannot see in our textbooks, that we cannot read in our textbooks, diba?
Yeah, I agree. Actually, ang SG, to be honest, with for me lang, the SGD is the best part of the online med school for me. It's the best part. Why? Because it's the time that you actually get so amazed. And I remember this. Moment na first time ko yung na SGD na attendan, and then ine-explain nung doctor sa physiology how it is relating to when the patient is stabbed, nag-pneumothorax siya, tapos paano magko-compensate yung lungs. And then nung ini-explain niya yun sa amin, tapos I'm asking these questions, it was the first time na I wasn't afraid to ask these questions, no matter what other people will think. Nung ini-explain niya sa amin, tas nung sinabi niya, hindi ba nakaka-amaze ang human body? And that's when it hit me. Sabi ko, shucks, Lord, ang amazing ng katawan na ginawa mo. Ang amazing ng human body. Though we live for those moments eh. That's why you study medicine. That's why you study medicine, for you to be able to understand the things that na meron palang mga bagay na hindi mo naiintindihan, and this actually equips you to be a better person, to be able to help other people. So I think, yun nga, tama ka dun sa sinabi mo, Adrian, sobrang I am fully and 100% on the same page with you there, na we need to ask questions. And we need to, wag din tayo mahiya. Another thing na feeling ko din na I could have done better was, I wish I could have socialized more din sa mga kasubsec ko and sa mga classmates ko. It's a reality, no. For me kasi very unique yung experience, kasi I entered med school, hindi siya gap year eh. Gap years siya. So it's half a decade bago ako nag-med school. So whether it is you're on the same generation or same batch or not. Ako, for example, ito aminin ko and sasabihin ko to kasama si Sibs dito. Pero sobrang proud ko kasi sa batch nila. Sobrang proud ko sa batch namin na mga magkakaklase ng pharma. And then nung nakikita ko na, ay, doctor na sila, sila Sibs. Parang they are the inspiration kung bakit ako parang nagko-continue din now. Pero parang ngayon pag nilulook back ko, I feel like, I feel like somehow, nandun kasi sa akin yung perspective na parang hindi ko ini-enjoy yung moment because I'm looking for what could have happened pag ganito, ganyan. So, I wish I could have socialized more with my current batch now kasi kahit magkakaiba kami ng age, we are still one and the same. So, yun yung naging mantra namin na wala talagang iwanan. Like, talagang na-appreciate mo yun eh. You look at those moments na makikita mo na they care about me kasi ginigising nila ako pag hindi ako gising bago ng quiz. Nag-uusap-usap kami. We actually help each other understand these topics, ganyan. So, those are on the emotional sides. Sige. Okay, last. Doon naman sa practical naman na side, how I wish that I learned how to use Anki earlier. To be honest.
Matutuwa si Sib sa sinabi mo.
How I wish I learned how to use Anki earlier kasi para ako natutunan ko na lang siya mga third shift, fourth shift na kasi yung I had this friend from Ateneo who's really really passionate about this thing as well. Ako kasi more on active recall ganyan pero space repetition hindi ko siya napapractice pero yung kaklase ko from Ateneo, he's a very very smart guy. Sabi niya do you wanna learn how to use Anki, ganyan. And I'm like, okay, sure, fine, whatever. Tapos nung tinry ko siya, okay. Mas nare-retain ko siya. Tapos pagdating ng quiz, ganun. How I wish I done that. I have done that earlier. So, yun, on the practical side. Kasi kanina, puro emotional na yung sinasabi ko eh. Ayan, on the practical, how I wish I learned how to use Anki earlier or how to use flashcards.
Maybe we can invite your friend, no? In a future episode.
Oo, baka gusto niyo siyang
Sibs and I were planning to dedicate an episode on Anki. So if your friend is really passionate about it, as passionate as Sibs, so we'd be very happy to invite him soon.
Yeah, I feel like Sibs and him can talk all day regarding that.
Sobrang passionate din those Sibs dito.
They're passionate about it. Yun. So yun nga, on the practical side yun, yung Anki, I wish I learned that. Second is, I wish I maximized YouTube more. To be honest I wish I maximized YouTube more. Kasi pag dati parang I wanted to learn buy the book, parang ganyan. Pero you have to understand that you do not learn things like, let's say for example, you try to open the freezer and then you saw the piece of meat there and then iluluto mo siya, ipa-fry mo yung meat na yun nang hindi mo pa siya pinalalambot. It's like a suicide mission na gusto mong maluto siya. That doesn't happen with learning. You need to understand na kailangan mong palambutin muna yung isang concept. The key is you need to understand things better first. So, na-apply ko na yan mga second shift na, third shift na. Kasi parang ang ginagawa ko noon ay basa, ganyan. Pagdating ng quizzes, ang baba ng first shift ko kasi wala nga ako nare-retain kasi hindi nga tama yung learning style ko. Parang I'm trying to force myself to learn. Pero pagdating ng mga second shift na, na-realize ko na, sige, maghanap na lang ako ng YouTube video na nag-explain nito, what is this concept, tsaka ako babalikan yung lecture. Para meron kang baon,
bro,
meron kang bala.
Exactly.
Yan din yung tip ni Bro Adrian eh. Very passionate siya sa previous episode namin about anatomy.
That's nice.
Maximizing
multimedia. And binanggit niya yung YouTube, diba bro? Binanggit niya
kasi,
YouTube for anatomy.
Diba, kami ni Sibs, yung approach talaga namin is comprehension before memorization. When you dive right away into the text, ang daming information, it's hard to digest if wala kang parang overview of the topic. Pero kasi if you watch a YouTube video first which simplifies the concept, magandang pagka-explain, meron ka ng picture in your head. And when you dive into the text, you understand it more. So may understanding ka na, and then it will be easier to memorize if you understand the concept, diba? So, yun nga, ang ganda ng analogy mo na palambutin mo na yung parang i-defrost mo muna yung meat before you cook it. So, yun, YouTube muna. If sobrang unfamiliar ng topic, hanap ka muna ng YouTube videos. After you watch the videos, medyo maintindihan mo siya, ma-defrost yung meat, then you cook it. go to the text, mas maintindihan mo talaga as
Tsaka
opposed
you
to diving right
remember,
out. And you remember more. Kasi,
yeah.
lalo na pag visual learner ka, marami sa atin visual learners.
Mm-mm.
You remember more talaga.
Tsaka you remember things better if it makes sense to you. If it doesn't make sense to you, it's not gonna go anywhere. I can really attest to it.
Yeah.
Like sa histology, hindi nagme-make sense sa akin kung bakit cuboidal yung lining niyan. Bakit ganito, ganyan. Tapos nung naghanap ako ng YouTube video, parang explaining bakit ba siya naging cuboidal, ba't siya ginawa ni Lord na cuboidal, bakit naging columnar siya, bakit may cilia siya,
Exactly.
what are the purposes of these. Parang, okay. So, ibig sabihin, ito sa kidney na to, dapat ganito yung maging lining niya kasi for absorption and reabsorption na siya. So, if it makes sense, it actually helps you to understand better. So, I feel like oo nga no, you can make an episode devoted to learning styles.
Oo.
Sobrang passionate ko about it kasi pag tinuturo ko din siya sa mga students before, lagi kong sasabi sa kanila na you need to learn din ganyan. You need to learn how to learn, hindi lang you need to learn. Dapat alam mo kung paano ka mag-aaral. Another is how I wish I practiced more on past examinations.
Yun.
Ayan.
Na-discuss ni Bro Adrian yan, samples.
Although to be honest kasi, ito sasabihin ko na sa mga incoming na students, binubuko ko ang UST Med, sorry, baka may makarinig sa akin dito na mga prof ng UST. Hindi, pero to be honest, hindi kasi there is a term na ginagamit sa UST but hindi ko masyadong sasabihin yung term na yun. Pero meron kasi mga subjects na parang
Samplex.
what they ask last year is going to be almost the same or the same concept is going to come out with a certain subject. Hindi ko sasabihin ko ano yung subject na yun, pero manonotice na lang yun ng mga students pag nag-first year na sila, no? Tsaka ng mga kamag-anak nyo na mag-first year. Pero mapapansin nyo yun, sobrang hindi flexible nun kasi sobrang hinirapan nila yung items because of yun nga, the possibility of cheating in the exams. So talagang expectin nyo na mas mahirap yung subjects sa exams ninyo, mas mahirap yung topic sa exams ninyo ngayon compared sa mga naging exams nung mga earlier na batches. Parang mas, case-based, analytical, ganun yung ginawa sa amin this year. Ang naging rationale ko noon, hindi na ako mag-aaral nung past na sample exams or past na examinations kasi wala namang uulit diyan walang ganito ganyan. But there were some classmates who still do better kahit na hindi naman umuulit because they were guided on what to study. They were also guided on the way that the prof or the physician was asking questions. And I also said that to my students before, hindi ko lang na-apply. Sabi ko kasi sa kanila, when you're studying, you should remember parang kahit ibalato mo yung mga unang quizzes mo na hindi ganun katataas, pero parang aralin mo kung paano nagtanong yung ganitong prof. Alalahanin mo paano nagtatanong yung ganitong department because it's really going to help you. Kasi kahit pasabihin natin na grades do not define us, yun naman yung magiget sa atin across sa med talaga.
Yeah.
So you really do have to do well. Isa sa mga hindi ko pinagsisisihan, of course, pero yung parang nag-ipon na talaga, kahit mababa yung first shift ko dahil adjustment period siya, hindi ko pinagsisihan na parang I always try to do my best in all of the quizzes kasi nag-pay off siya kasi matataas somehow, tapos kapag bumaba ka somehow sa ibang sa mga later na grading period, mapupull up talaga siya. So yun ang lagi ko ding advice, laging mag-ipon ng points. As easy the subject is, mag-aral na agad or parang gawin na talaga yung best talaga. And lastly, syempre, dapat parang wag kang magdadamot masyado. Yun, parang ganun. Parang feeling ko it helps then that you also help your classmates kasi we're all in this together. Yun ang lagi naming kasabihan sa batch 2024, walang iwanan. Like, walang sense of parang hindi ako nakaka-sense ng competition somehow dun sa sections. Like, we always rationalize things. Parang meron kami yung section ganito, ang toka nila talaga, nagtututor sila na anatomy. Like sa amin, nagtututor kami ng physiology, ganito, ganyan. Parang nagtutulungan talaga yung batch namin. Parang hindi siya naging competition. So, at the end of the day talaga, hilaan siya pataas. Hindi maging masaya yung med school kung Siyempre, merong time na magdadamot ka din. Siyempre, meron talagang kailangan mong ipagdamot. Pero, hindi mo pwedeng laging ganun na strategy. Kailangan mo ding
Yeah.
isipin na, how do we get everyone across the finish line?
Teamwork talaga dapat,
So,
di ba?
So, yun. Those are the things that I wish I could have done before. Anki. Most specifically, Anki.
True. So, alam mo, Gab, when we started the interview, medyo yung you parang pinore out mo yung mga challenges, no? Sinabi mo yung mga challenges nung first day. But
Ang hirap
then,
pala, bro,
as
no?
we went along with the interview, medyo naging positive yung note mo. Tapos, I saw how, as a class, no, and as a faculty, UST-FMS and your class really was able to, adjust. And they're still trying to adjust, no, with the times. And that's really something beautiful, no? And as you said, no, it's a blessing to be able to study medicine during a pandemic, no?
Yeah.
So, before we end, no, let's just recap, no? Recap natin yung mga highlights ng mga sinabi ni Gab. So, of course, you said that online med school is really very challenging. Ang dami talagang challenges. Pero wala namang challenge na hindi na walang solution, 'di ba? Based sa mga sinabi mo. So, in one way or another, you really are able to adapt with distance learning. And you also narrated what an average day in online med school is like. And I think that would be very useful, especially yung mga wala talagang idea. The incoming freshmen na wala talagang idea on how online med school will be like. And then, of course, our essentials. Ano nga yung mga essentials natin, bro Sibs? Yung mga dapat
So, yun, no? Yung
i-prepare.
mga essentials na sinabi ni Gab, pen, paper, highlighter. Kahit online, no? The irony, online, we need the physical books pa rin, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Siguro parang rin, bro, a break from the virtual world, no?
Yun.
Kaya ngayon, siguro mas kailangan ng something physical, something we can touch.
So, during lecture, bro, food and drinks para hydrated tayo. Kasi minsan, bro, pa naglalaro ka ng computer games, hindi mo pansin na, ay, tapos na pala yung lunch. Parang ganun siguro yung feeling pag online.
Oo, parang ganun din siguro.
Tapos yung pinaka-passionate ako, Anki flashcards sana matutunan before lalagay ko yung link ng previous episode natin dito. And nabanggit ni Gab, no, yung syncability ng Google Calendar, no, na utilize sila. Buong class, gumamit sila ng Google Calendar para ma-check yung schedule. May gumagamit sila ng kulay para ma-differentiate yung mga subjects.
Yeah.
Then, meron silang Pomodoro timer. And as a class, meron silang Pomodoro activity. 50-10 ba yung ginagamit nyo, bro? Bro Gab? 50-10.
That depends.
Rin, no?
Pero yun nga,
modify naman siya.
Pero most of the time, parang 50-10 ang ginamit namin kasi para longer yung aaral mo din.
And yung comment ni Gab, no? We can survive without an iPad. Pero iPad alone, parang mahirap.
Yeah. So, kailangan talaga may laptop or desktop. Di baling wala kang iPad. Pero better na rin if meron, di ba? By the way, do you use a planner? Yung sinabi mong calendar, planner yung no? Kailangan talaga may planner.
Yeah, I use a planner and yun nga, sabi ko, 'di ba, to maximize also the digital resources. I also have an app kung Microsoft kayo, for example. I think usable din siya. Parang meron kasing Microsoft to-do list. So parang you can sync it on all of your devices na nalilist mo na dito ano yung kailangan mong gawin. So parang mayroon kasi siyang pleasure na check mo kung ano yung natapos mo na, tapos lahat ng devices mo mag-update. So it's useful to have a planner din.
Yeah.
And also din Google Drive din, yung mga yung mga documents din. Parang pag meron kayo mga ganun, parang you can sync it with everyone.
Yeah, true.
Ang sarap ng Google Drive ng UST, no? Parang 3 terabytes ata yung file.
Oo. Useful.
Hindi ba unlimited, bro? Hindi ba unlimited yun?
Hindi ko sure kung parang unlimited nga eh.
Unlimited
Feeling,
yun.
Ako lang
Hindi
nag-set.
lang 3
Ako lang
terabytes.
nag-set ng limit.
Also, we talked about the pros and cons, no? Like the pros, yung availability ng resources, repeatability, kasi pwede mong balik-balikan yung mga resources, no? And you're given lectures ahead of time, no? So that helps with spaced repetition. And of course, there's flexibility with time management. But then again, sabi mo, medyo mahirap pa rin kasi ang daming homework, kumbaga. And the cons naman, bro, ano yung mga cons natin, bro, Sibs?
So yun, no, pag online, harder to clarify questions. And hard to budget time. Kasi nga, diba, yung break time mo, ginagawa mong lab work. Tapos, yung retention, mas mahirap. And yung obvious na problem, yung pag meron kang internet connection. And if may calamities. And if yung PhilAm or ibang region ng mundo, yung time zone, kailangan mag-adapt ka. So, kung gabi sa Amerika, kailangan gawin mo umaga. Philippine time.
True. And of course, yung sabi mo, yung internet connection, isa yun sa mga nagiging issues talaga with distance learning. Lalo na sa country natin kasi unlike our neighboring countries na have high speed and stable connection, tayo medyo pa rin tayo. Huli
Papunta
pa rin tayo when it comes to internet connection.
Tips ni Gab, no, yung kumbaga mga philosophical tips niya, no. Don't take med too seriously. Diba?
Yeah.
And
take it seriously
always
naman.
have a why.
Take it seriously siguro, but not too seriously.
Oo,
not
too seriously to
GC.
the point na masakit na sa utak. Yeah.
And yung pati yung advice ni Adrian, no, yung don't be afraid to ask questions. No? Socialize more, sabi ni Gab. And use Anki, YouTube, and Samplex. So before bro, no, yung final message ni Gab, ang pinaka nagustuhan ko lang sa sinabi niya, yung always have a why. Kasi ang na-realize ko bro, if you are driven by the right motivation, you will stand the test of time. Tama ba bro? So kunyari ngayong pandemic, so kung yung motivation mo, gusto ko number 1 ako, gusto ko lagi ako exempted. Kung yung internet mo masira, o di yung grade mo bumaba kunyari, parang pwede kang tumiklop eh. Pero if your motivation is to be the best doctor or a good doctor for your patient, kung mangyari sa yun, okay lang, basta ang motivation ko naman makatulong sa mga patients. Hindi naman ako ganun na para sa grade lang. Feeling ko, makaka-survive ka sa mga challenges. Yun lang yung na-realize ko sa mga sinabi ni Gab. Always have a why. And yung why mo, sana driven by the right motivation.
Right.
Meaningful.
Tama. Kasi, tama yung sinabi mo bro. Kasi, oo nga, may why ka, pero yung why mo naman, superficial lang. Gusto mo lang maging doktor kasi gusto mong yumaman, gusto mo yung prestige sa pagiging doktor. I think that's not an enough why to really survive and thrive in the medical world, no? So, yeah, you really have to have the right why then. Not just a why, but a right why.
So, bro Gab, any final message sa mga incoming first year? And yung mga gusto mag-med?
Nako, where do we start? For me, personally, yun nga, tama yung sinabi kanina din na you need to find your why. First of all, we all have unique stories and we all have unique perspectives to bring to med school. Remember always that when you are going to med school, you're not just signing up for a 4-year education. You're not just signing up for 4 years of training or 10 years of training kasi 4 years, tas meron kang residency, meron kang board exams, tas meron ka pang fellowship or something. Parang mahaba talaga siya na process. You're not just signing up for a decade worth of learning, but you're signing up for lifelong learning. You always need to remember the reason why you are here. Ito yung lagi ko to sasabi sa mga students ko din before, na yung araw-araw natin na pagpapakamatay natin sa pagpapakahirap natin mag-aral, ito yung nagiging karugtong ng buhay ng mga naghihingalo nating pasyente. Always remember that you are studying right now because sometimes or somehow one day mayroon kang isang pasyente na magpapasalamat sa'yo or kahit hindi magpasalamat sa'yo dahil ikaw yung naging dahilan kung bakit nadugtungan yung naghihingalo nilang buhay. You always need to return to that. For me, my why was when I noticed this in the public health setting when I came first there. Before kasi before ako mag-med school, wala akong reasons. Parang wala akong masyadong reasons. So, I feel like I would quit before. Pero, nung nahanap ko yung why ko, nung nakita ko yung reasons because I need to serve other people, kaya din ako nagstay. So, yun. For those of you na mga gustong mag-medicine, it's a very noble it's a noble profession, it's a noble vocation. So, go for it. If you feel like ito talaga yung para sa inyo, go for it. No matter where you are in the journey. I'd like to emphasize on that. Kasi, meron kasi mga iba iniisip nila na, hindi na ako magme-med school kasi parang 10 years na akong hindi nag-med eh. Or parang hindi na ako magme-med school dahil 5 years na. I have classmates who took a decade before they finally decided that they want to go to med school. There are practical reasons why you need not delay. Pero kung na-feel mo talaga na that's where you are being called, you go for it. Wag mong hayaan na parang mapigilan ka nito. And you seek the maturity that you bring. Yun nga, everyone brings something to the table. And kahit ano pang background ang pinanggalingan mo, you can actually bring something to help more people. So yun. Always remember na ang med school ay isang part lang ng journey. There's always a life that goes beyond it, and that's a life of service, having also your family with you, and you just keep on moving forward, just keep on working hard, and you will reach your dreams. So I hope that you will do well pag nag med school kayo. So see you around.
Wow. Thank you, Gab.
Thank you very much, Gab, for that
My pleasure.
very inspiring final message.
Very enlightening, no?
Yes, and we also want to thank, for really taking time to, for this interview. Baka may mga mas importante kang dapat gawin, but you really took the time to be with us and to share your experience for our, incoming freshmen and for those who are planning to go to med also in the future. So, malaki talagang tulong to for them because
Actually, bro, diba may nag-email sa atin na incoming first year daw siya.
May nag-email din sa amin, incoming first year, and that person wanted some tips then for, on how to approach first year med. So, I really hope na our listeners today will, learn a thing or two or more from Gab. And alam ko, marami talaga silang na-learn kasi ang dami mong useful insights and tips for them today.
From physical to philosophical, no?
To emotional,
I do
mental,
hope so.
spiritual. Salamat
hope
talaga,
so.
salamat.
Thank you. It's an honor. It's also my pleasure to be invited here and to also get to talk to you, doctors.
Yes. As much as we would want to keep you here, medyo, magto 2 hours na yung recording natin. But, we will, okay lang. Don't be sorry kasi, ang dami talaga namin na-learn and our listeners, I'm sure din. So, we will break this up naman into maybe 3 episodes para hindi siya masyadong mahaba. But, thank you so much, no? And for our listeners naman, if you have questions, violent reactions, comments, you can always reach us naman at our email, The Better Pill Podcast.
And Facebook, bro.
And Facebook, yeah. Actually, gagawa pa lang kami ng Facebook page, but it will be up soon. The Better Pill Podcast at gmail.com and sa Facebook, The Better Pill Podcast. We also have a YouTube channel pala, The Better
That's
Pill
exciting.
Podcast. Yeah. And, if you have questions for Gab then, just email us. No? So, kami na lang we'll just throw the question to him. Okay lang ba yun, Gab?
O naman, it's always an honor to have, and sobrang gaan ninyong kausap. Sobrang nag-enjoy ako sa conversations natin. Medyo napahaba nga yung masasabi ko kasi ang galing niyo mag-interview eh.
Thank you, Gab. That means a lot. So, Sibs,
This has been Mike.
and this has been Adrian,
Catch us again next week for your refill prescription of
the
Better
Better
Pill.
Pill.